brains. Wrong scene. Morning, everyone. As you can tell, I'm a little bit rushed this morning. Oh, man. Okay. So let's just tilt that a little bit there. Oh, there we go. Right. So, I want to talk about CES. Because guess who stayed up late watching CES announcements? Okay. I actually find CES really interesting for a few reasons. And I just wanted to go through those because we get a lot of coverage on CES, but it tends to be a lot of really bouncy, fast coverage. I actually want to talk about the history of CES, and I want to talk about the overall effect it has on the industry, because it is interesting. Conferences and how we do announces and how we do the cycle is just one of those things that I don't think enough people actually analyze and talk about. We focus so much on what are the CES announcements. So CES, or as it originally started out, it was called Comdex, was always a bit of a strange goose. It started out in Las Vegas, right next to this porn conference, and it was in January, the first week of January, because it was a dead time. It was the cheapest time they could get a conference in one of the cheapest cities they could get it. And initially it was hi-fis, it was computers, like hobbyist computers and things like that. And it was, like pushing. There was a lot of, since the very start of it, there's been a tradition of bringing along weird gadgets and people trying to launch small products, and I always find that fascinating. So as it's evolved into CES and as it's evolved into the modern thing, you basically have two conferences happening side by side, if you will. And I'm not talking about the porn conference. I am talking about iteration versus innovation. Okay, so every year you will have things like, here are our new TVs, here are our new hi-fis, here are our new GPUs, here are our new laptops. And the conversation there is both extremely interesting and extremely boring. The consumer press will generally focus on, what's the laptop you should buy this year, or what's the TV you should buy this year. And realistically, the iteration from a consumer point of view is actually really dull. From an engineering point of view, and from if you're interested in a particular product space, it's fascinating, because it's like, will we be able to get, because CES is one of the places standards are not launched, but consolidated, right? So, for example, stereoscopy in TVs, like 3D TVs, we call them. There was always a push for quite a while to get 3D TVs to happen, but it wasn't until a big CES this is like a decade ago, where basically everyone showed up with a 3D TV, and there was some agreed upon standards that 3D TV happened. Much like a similar thing happened with 4K, similar thing happened with 1080p, HDR. Basically, you always have a few outliers, but a standard is going to be everywhere if a whole bunch of people have shown up and committed to product lines that support that. And a lot of the stuff that goes on isn't as exciting unless you're really interested in product space. So like last year's CES, everyone had Amazon integration. It just basically became a thing that you could shove in to your fridge, your toaster, whatever, and people would be like, oh, okay, that's a thing you can put in there. But Amazon integration wasn't actually that interesting because it wasn't a standard. It wasn't sort of a uniform go for it. But when you have like a new sound standard, when you have something like UHD or whatever comes through, and a whole bunch of manufacturers adopt it, that becomes very interesting. Another one is so that's on the iteration side. And then on the total opposite end of the spectrum, you basically have the weird gadgets of CES. You have the weird gadgets of CES, and they're fascinating. So there are things like toothbrushes, because you don't think you need a better toothbrush, but people are like, we need a better mousetrap, right? So they're like electric toothbrushes were a thing that appeared at CES, and they were a thing that took CES by storm. This is a very long time ago. And you see sonic toothbrushes there. And now, like this year, I saw one where it's a gum toothbrush, where it's like, and now for most of these products, CES is not the first time you've seen them. Like this gum toothbrush apparently had a Kickstarter, and it's kind of one of those ideas that if you're sitting drunk at a pub, or you're sitting with a bunch of your mates and you talk, you can kind of convince yourself it's a good idea. And then someone makes a product and you're like, that's a terrible idea. So like the gum one, imagine a gum guard that's built into a toothbrush. That's built into a toothbrush design. It's weird. It's strange. But those are the kind of products that go to CES. 3D printers. They started out, a lot of the 3D printer tech started out as weird innovation at CES, and they've been there for a very long time. But now 3D printers are a staple, and now we're starting to look at 3D printers at CES, and we're looking, okay, what are the standards people are locking in on? Is it innovation in materials? Is it innovation in cooling or whatever? And so there's this weird spectrum where things just start off as weird quirky gadgets, and there's a whole bunch of weird quirky gadgets. Things like the new Segway that looks like something out of Wall-E. It's a chair that you lean back on and you go meow. And I'm not bringing up these products on screen, and I'm not cycling through these products for the two reasons of I'm extremely tired and rushed this morning, but the main reason is I think it's distracting when people talk about CES to focus on the announcements and focus on the products. And I think it's one of the reasons why we don't talk about what makes it such a weird and interesting conference. Because a lot of people will be trying to determine who won CES. They'll be really hyper-focused in the weirdness of CES, like this weird gadget we found, or that weird gadget. And they won't do year-on-year comparisons, and they won't pick out things like where standards have been unified and such as much. There are some journalists who do the work, but very, very few. And I think it is the interesting thing, because generally with conferences, trade conferences, you've got two kinds. You've got the ultra business kind, where basically everyone who's interested in doorknobs shows up at the doorknob conference, and it is dull as fuck, and it's basically everyone is, unless you are deep into doorknobs, you are not going to be interested in the doorknob conference. And then you have spectacle conferences, and spectacle conferences are things like E3. There are things like what's it called? The big one for films, and Comic-Con. There are things where they're basically big ass ad campaigns. That's what those conferences are. And it's kind of bonkers to me that you've got this sort of dull stuff and you've got this basically marketing stuff, and then you come across something like CES, which is, I don't really know of anything like it. If you, as an average punter, were to attend CES, you would just be confounded. There's just CES is huge, it's massive. And a lot of the stands that are at CES are just doing sort of iterative announcements of, here's our product line for 2020. They're like, oh, we're launching 5 new TVs, or these are the cell phones we're launching, or whatever. And obviously that particular company is really fascinated or interested in it. And it's not just that, it's like you will see a whole bunch of smart bathroom fittings or whatever. And it's weird to me because, like, we have car shows, right? And cars, it's a clear category. And we have camera shows, it's a clear category. But consumer electronics used to be, I mean, when you go back, it used to be a very niche, small category, right? Because most of what we bought wasn't electronics. Whereas now, almost everything we buy is electronics. I mean, yeah, this mug I bought isn't electronics, but if I go through all the items on my desk and I go through the items I've purchased in the last year, consumer electronics label applies to a large amount of it, and it's become this umbrella. And yeah, everything from a weird gum-based sonic toothbrush to here's AMD and Intel giving their latest chip announcements. And I do find that absolutely fascinating. So has it been anything that's jumped out at you guys over the past few CESs? I am reading chat. I'm not responding to it at the moment because but there's been the last breakaway at CES, like proper breakaway that really just sort of was a bombshell to everyone, was the Oculus. And that was 8 years ago, roundabout. That was the DK1. I think it was 8 years ago. Or 9. No, 8, wasn't it? 8 years ago. And that was a moment where a category was created. And we had a similar effect with the MakerBot. When the MakerBot printer hit, like 3D printers had been at CES before, but when MakerBot hit, that was and there was a standard, and that's when a lot of file standards get finalized and stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of it is. This is why I say it's really interesting to actually deconstruct CES as a phenomenon, because one of the reasons why CES originally happened in January was because it was dirt cheap, and everyone had just, you finalize, if you're in consumer electronics and you're selling TVs or hi-fis or anything, everyone wants to finalize their product lines and get their product lines stable for Q4, because Q4 is Christmas, it's Thanksgivings, it's Black Friday, it's all that. So you're going to shift a lot of product in that period. But to stabilize your product for Q4, it means it needs to be in manufacture before Q3, preferably, because you want to be stocking up and you want to be educating the consumer before Q3, which means your design team and such has probably sort of wrapped on productization and shipping it in Q2, right? Realistically, as the line goes. You might tighten that down to a Q3, Q4, but what this means is January, besides being cheap, was also useful to the industry, because CES, if you go back, it wasn't the only show in town. There were other shows in the year, and there are still other shows in the year, but it's kind of just perfectly placed. And I don't think people thought it through that much. I think a lot of this was a happy accident. So as a result, a lot of tech and innovation companies feel really good about the first week or second week of January, I should say, because it's like, all right, okay, we've solidified our product line. These guys haven't been doing any work in Q4 because we've been shipping out Christmas stuff and whatnot and da. So it's a good period for us to trial balloon a lot of products, because we know that if you're interested in buying a TV as an average Joe on the street, you're not watching CES, but your market leaders, your trendsetters, all those kind of people, they're going to be following CES, and they're going to be sort of trial ballooning stuff up. And then the point that you guys were making earlier about the press, it's really interesting because the press is basically, everyone's just fucking zoned out, right? Because you've had Christmas, you've had the mad rush, you've had all the holiday fluff stories and your backlog you built up there. And now immediately out of CES comes a million press releases. Every single company that is at CES issues a minimum of one press release. And those press releases are basically pre-made content for journalists to mine, market, slice up, and ship out. And then you do have all the quirky stories, and you have all the things, and it's basically, it's grit for the mill, for the news mill. And so CES is a wonderful convenience for not only the trade press, but the general press. Like you go onto a BBC, or you go into a CNN or whatever, and they'll basically have tons of little stories, fluff pieces they'll be able to throw in without much thought, and they'll be able to, but again, most of this journalism is happening on automatic, and most of it is very wag the dog kind of design, in that the press releases and these companies' agendas are driving the conversation. And I think if you really, and this is why I don't want to talk about specific announcements from 2020, I think if you really want to write good material on CES, you can't write it in the week of CES. And everyone knows that if you want a YouTube video or you want a press story or whatever to cover CES, you have to release it this week, because this is the week that the press blitz is happening. This is the week that everyone's looking. This is the week that eyeballs and attention and stuff are on there. But I'd give a lot more. I'd give a lot more attention, and I'd give a lot more credence to any news stories happening about CES sort of next week or the week after. And the other problem is you'll get these supercuts of CES where it'll be like, here's LG's conference in 5 minutes, here's Samsung's conference in 7 minutes, here's Sony's conference in 5 minutes, and it'll be these half an hour long press conferences. And when the video journalists cut it up, they cut up the talking points, and they cut up what they consider the big beats, and like maybe the spec sheet, but it's actually not the interesting stuff they cut up. In fact, I find it less useful to watch those supercuts than I do just to read the one-page press brief that's been issued by the company themselves. Because if you're really interested in dissecting what a company is doing and a company's vision and all this stuff, the important stuff isn't the top beat items, right? Because the top beat items have been thought about really carefully, and they're just full of pizzazz of like, yeah, we're rolling out this new product X, right? It's going to be the best vibrating dildo you have ever seen. Rah! What's actually a lot more interesting is when you listen to what the CEOs choose to spend their time on in the in-betweens of like, oh, we're really into innovation about and we consider ourselves in the entertainment space, or we consider ourselves to be ubiquitous to a person's life, or this is a strong product lineup, or we've got these partnerships, or you can get a lot more nuance about what a company is doing and what a sector is doing when you attack the middle words, the filler sentences. If a CEO takes 2 minutes out of their 30-minute slot to talk about innovation in some particular area, that matters, right? That's a signal. That's a very strong signal. It's the same way that not enough people who are interested in a given company or a given sector don't pay enough attention to earnings calls and detail, right? And I suppose that is really the crux of what I'm getting so frustrated with about CES. I love CES. I think it's a very, very interesting event. Very few people are doing journalism. Very few people are going, okay, right, what does this actually mean? And I don't mean, oh, here's an exciting story we can write. But, so for example, when 3D TVs hit, perfect example. The most exciting thing about CES when 3D TVs hit, as I said earlier, was the standards. And when people were like, here's the standards, HDMI cables are going to support these standards. And that was a really big deal. But we didn't talk about what compromises were made. We didn't, like, people were like, oh, are people going to buy this and da-da-da-da-da? But they weren't like, right, here's the full scope of the problem. Here's the full tackle of how this is going to do. And the pieces were basically, they fall into a couple of buckets. And this generally happens with CES technology. Here's the crazy new announce, right? So here's like, I'm regurgitating press releases and blah, 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 and da-da-da. Almost no one's talking about the standards or the tech specs. But then the second bit, and it's usually part of the announce feed or it's a separate piece. Here's why I think this technology is the best thing since sliced bread. Here's why I think this technology is going to fail miserably, right? There's never a middle ground. And there's never a discussion about how is this pipeline of 3D stuff getting through, right? And I mean, I like 3D TVs as an example because I think everyone will now turn around and go, 3D TVs were a nightmare. And it's sad because, so here's why I think it's sad. 3D TVs left a mark on our industry, right? Even though now, if you go into a shop and you try to buy a 3D TV, you'll have a hard time. They started the stereoscopy conversation again. They forever changed cinema. Cinema is now 3D by default, and a lot of content has been made in 3D for a very long time because of it, because of the 3D TV revolution. Like, the concept of a 3D TV was a failure, but the concept of the 3D content pipeline became solidified. And that was the more important discussion that came out of CES. And that was the thing I didn't see people talking about as much. I didn't see them talking about HDMI cables. I didn't see them talking about standards. There is a thing I've had for a very long time that I've been trying to do projects with. I haven't spoken about it because reasons, but I've had this for about a year. I've been trying to get stuff off the ground. I will do a separate talk about this. But this is a product called the Looking Glass. And it's fast. It's a great little toy. And this would not have happened without 3D TV. So this, and we'll do a full brief on it. I want to do, when I actually got the thing running, it is a 3D monitor. But it's a hologram display. So this is actually, this supports like full crazy on holograms. This would not have happened without 3D TV. And it's an exciting place to be, and VR would not have happened without 3D TV. But you know, people are so interested in the gristle conversation. You know, the conversation of, is this the thing you're going to buy this year? That is not interesting. And this is relatively, I mean, much like 3D TV was expensive, this was pricey. You know, this is not a cheap piece of kit, but this is not really meant for the average consumer at the moment. This is about where technology is going, and that's what I think CES is so interesting about. Like, most of the products you see at CES will not be sold, but it's where innovation happens. It's where people take a punt on an idea. And from a journalist side, now I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it maybe a week or two from now. You know, it's going to be a while before I do it. It's going to be sort of mid to late January before you see me do this. But I want to have a proper conversation about what has come out of CES 2020 and what it means for previous trends and new trends. And yeah, I just wanted to have this brief conversation about CES and what CES means to you guys. Will you be able to see it on camera? Yes, you will. You will be able to see it on camera. The effect works perfectly from a camera point of view. So it has a benefit over VR for that, in that it's easier to demo on camera. You can find things on YouTube about it. Yeah, it's pretty nifty, but I think it's more interesting from the legacy it leaves behind. Right, so for those of you on YouTube, this is a live show. We're just going to go, if you guys have any questions, and we're going to sort of wrap this up as we're going. It's so good to see you guys, by the way. It's really, really appreciated. Yeah, no, as I said, a lot of little stories. Yeah, 100% right. There's a lot of just reprinting of things, fluff pieces in January. We talked about that element in there. And 3D pixels. Yeah, no, 3D pixels were a big push. And yeah, as I said, you'll be able to see the looking glasses effect on camera. You will be able to yeah, see how it works. There is a particular thing I want to get working on there, and I have other things, but the reason I haven't spoken, there is a reason I haven't spoken about it for a year. Part of it is how busy I've been. The honest truth. But yeah, we'll get back to you do get a stereoscopic image, because the thing that people don't realize is your eyes are further apart than you realize, and it's all about how finely you slice that area. It's pretty cool effect. It's blown a lot of people away in the office. Okay. Yeah, not on camera. Not on camera or through a TV. Yes, that's correct. But I can move a camera very quickly, and you can see the degree of stereoscopy between that position and that position. So you can see how much it moves. Don't know what you mean, Tap. But yeah, that's yes. Thank you for dropping by. For those of you on YouTube, ta-ta for now.